Hey, welcome to Freedom Decoded. We're Demir and Carey Bentley, founders of Life Hack Method. We ditched the 9 to 5, moved abroad, and today we are living what we consider to be our dream lifestyle. And professionally, we help other professionals get back in control and start moving towards the life of their dreams. You can find us at lifehackmethod.com. Today, we are talking about a really great topic, which is, could working 7 days a week actually be really good for you?
Is that possible? Could that be possible? Quick show note, if you hear what sounds like a construction site, it's not your imagination. There's some construction happening outside of our window. We're doing our best to mitigate it, but if you do hear a beeping truck backing up, don't worry, it's not you, it's us. All right. I have been wanting to do this topic for a while, and I finally convinced Carey to do it today, and I'm super, super excited because we have a bit of a funny story. Back in the day, when I was obsessed with the 4-hour work week and all I wanted to do was like get down to the 4-hour work week. I mean, I totally admit it. I'm that guy who read that book and was like, that's it, man. I'd be so happy if I could just work 4 hours a week, man. Carey suggested to me that we work a little bit just every day because we had a new fledgling business and there were always not like tons of work, but there was always something to be done every day. And I cannot emphasize how vigorously I rejected the idea. Maybe Carey, you can characterize it the way you...
It was really annoying. I mean, I could see his perspective that he felt like he couldn't really relax unless he was completely detached from work. I think he felt a lot of anxiety around things like checking the email inbox and stuff like that. But from my perspective, it was like, we can't afford, especially at this point in our business, to let important client emails go, several days without getting a response. And what if there's a sale that needs to go through? We just have a couple, it wasn't a lot. It was just 30 minutes on the weekend. And he put his foot down and would not do anything.
Vigorously. I mean, I won't say this was a fight because I think Carey was like, whoa, this guy's
he wouldn't. I didn't push it.
Yeah,
I didn't push it.
But I will say at the time if that past version of Demir was here, what he would say was, and it was true at the time, that I felt like I was trying to create this bubble of relaxation. Yeah. And I wanted to get as much time as possible. And I felt like I used this analogy that I felt like my relaxation time was blowing up a bubble. And that every time, even if somebody just mentioned work, it sort of popped that bubble and I had to start inflating it all over again.
Yeah, I remember that. I couldn't even bring up any questions about work or anything because
I didn't want to hear it.
I was working still the way I wanted to. And I couldn't even bring up a darn thing.
Because it was bursting my bubble. It was freaking me out. And so the irony now, fast forward and many years and a lot of iterations and experimentation later, lo and behold, I'm working 7 days a week, 4 hours a day, and loving it.
And now I'm the one being like, Demir, take this time off. Can't you skip it today?
I mean, it is interesting. I wouldn't say it's a reversal in the sense that I'm overworking. You can do the math. Yeah. 7 days a week, 4 hours a day. That's 28 hours a week. I mean, that is a really smooth, easy work week. And we'll get into a little bit of I think the other benefits of a 7-day work week, but let's just stay with the irony for a second, right? Let's stay with that Carey sort of had it nailed from the beginning. And like many husbands, I wasn't hearing it from her. I needed to go through my own iterative process and experimentation. And we'll talk a little bit about what that sort of final aha moment was. But why don't we just sort of do some setup here and talk about maybe what the problem is as we see it. Yeah. And I think I'm going to toss this to you, Carey, but I think we all agree, we would all probably disagree on what the perfect work week would be, but I think we can all agree that the 8 to 6, Monday through Friday, plus nights and weekends of answering email, I think everybody agrees that sucks.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's too much. It's just too much. People are exhausted. If you feel exhausted, it's too much. I mean, you might have a big job and a lot of responsibilities, but you are only one person and time is so finite that, you have to be able to do it in a sustainable way.
But I mean, maybe if somebody was sitting here, they might be thinking to themselves, yeah, but Carey, work always sucks, right? Is there really ever a place where you can get where you're whistling a happy tune as you go into work? Or is it just work always sucks, so just buck up, buttercup, and get to it?
Yeah, no, I definitely don't think so. I mean, I think if anyone listening just envisioned their same exact job, but just doing it for only 4 hours a day, say, where you clock in, clock out, and after that you don't do anything, think to yourself, would you want to do that job? And I'll bet you the answer is going to be yes. You probably still like what you do for a living. It gives you a sense of satisfaction and accomplishment.
You're probably pretty good at it.
Achievement. Yeah, like you probably, feel like a badass at work, right? So you probably, the real issue is just that you feel so exhausted from it that, it's because of the length of the time that you're doing the job that it feels like something you hate.
You reminded me of a story. I worked in investment banking and hated it. So I was talking to an investment banker client and sort of, projected my own feelings onto him and said, well, let's be honest, you really don't want to be an investment banker, right? And he was like, no, actually, I love it. I love being an investment banker. So I was like, oh, so what's your ideal job? And he was like, this job at 40 hours a week instead of 90 hours a week.
Right.
That would be my ideal job. So I would agree with you. I disagree 100%. I think people overwork and get overwhelmed for so long that they forget any sense memory of what it felt like to, really enjoy going into work and feel energized by your work. I mean, think about that sentence, feel energized by your work. We'll get to this a little bit later, but part of the reason I work 4 hours a day, 7 days a week is because at 4 hours a day, I don't actually finish tired. I feel energized, like I'm ready for what's next. And it is true that good work done in the right quantity can actually send you a jolt of energy, not be the kind of thing where you're signing off totally squeezed out like a dry rag.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think this is sort of a new idea for a lot of people because the current solutions to the 8 to 6 typical work schedule are either, if you're an entrepreneur, like sort of more the hustle culture thing where it's like, well, you should just work all the time. I mean, don't turn off, just keep going.
Don't sleep.
It's like
your competition isn't sleeping.
No, they're not sleeping. Like, why are you sleeping? I see people sort of gloating like, oh, here I am sipping a cocktail, but still working. It's like, that's not very admirable, It's like.
Although we should talk about pool time sometime in this podcast. Like, there can be some cool ways to do a little bit of like,
Sure.
stylistic
I'm just
working.
saying that like when it's taken to that level of hustle culture, which is very common amongst, say, a younger set that doesn't really have all that many other family obligations, responsibilities, that kind of thing.
And people are out there trying to figure out how to be successful and they're looking for answers. And part of the answers that are being given to them is just work more, like outwork the competition. And I think that obviously you and I think that is dead wrong. I think it's dangerously wrong. And I think it's poisonous to our culture, but this is not a podcast about that. But let's just say that is one
proposed solution.
Just
idea.
Get used to working more, learn to love working more, just work more.
And then the other side of that coin is, okay, well, don't work at all. Work the 4-hour work week where you have everything automated and tons of assistants doing stuff for you and you're just relaxing at the beach the whole day. And I think that's cool, but it also sort of goes to, you think of somebody who's so stressed out by work that they really don't enjoy it at all. And their only idea is like, I just want to relax all day. I don't want to do anything, that's also sort of doesn't ring true for a lot of people. Like they enjoy what they do. They want to do it.
And I could say that way more than you ever were, I was a full-blown acolyte of the 4-hour work week and Tim Ferriss and still love so many of those ideas. So glad I read the book, would recommend the book to other people. But when I actually got to the 2-hour work week, if you could believe it or not, for a while. And when I got there, it was not at all what I thought it would be. Right. Tim Ferriss in his book is like spending all the extra time, like traveling the world and learning Spanish. But the thing about me is when I'm not working, I'm not learning Spanish. I'm usually doing things that are a lot less
developmental. You're not hitting the gym with all your spare time.
I'm not hitting the gym. I'm not learning Spanish. I mean, that's my vision of myself, is that I would be that kind of person. And the truth is that the work that I do is, for me, I'm convinced, the best work that I could be doing. It's the best use of my talent in this life. And I'm very lucky to have found something where I don't know that I wouldn't go so far as to say I'm the best at what I do, but this is certainly the best thing that I could be doing for me.
And you're striving to be the best in the world. And I think that's so admirable because you have a mission. You have a clear mission about what you are here in the world to accomplish. And that mission is not necessarily traveling the world and learning Spanish. Like that feels a little bit too selfish for you.
Yeah.
I feel like you have a bigger mission where you actually want to serve and help other people.
Well, and here's the point in how I think it relates to most people. I think 9 out of 10 people, if they go all the way to the 2-hour or 4-hour work week, will realize that they actually enjoy working for its own sake. And I'll go so far as to say, if I was a billionaire and I had no need to work for the rest of my life, I would still work a good 3 to 4 hours a day, because the perfect day in my mind is doing something that you're good at and adding some value to the rest of the world for 3 to 4 hours. At 3 to 4 hours, it is smooth. I'm just talking about goes down so smooth and energizing. It's almost the opposite of everything you experience work at 8 hours. At 8 hours, I'm dreading work and I'm stealing myself. I'm like, oh God, how am I gonna get through this 8 hours? And then after the 8 hours, I'm trying to fake it. I'm trying to pretend that I'm interested in talking to you and being with our child, even though I'm sorry, I'm gonna be the first to admit it, like, I'm not. After 8 hours of hard work, I'm like not stoked to be a dad and be a husband. I'm like, put me in front of a TV and put a pin in me.
Yeah, I think you're also not rushed, right? Like in the mornings, you're not starting until 10 a.m. So you're like, you're around, you're playing with Gigi, you're making breakfast, you're puttering around the house, like watering the plants and playing music and talking to your brother. Like you're doing regular stuff, even though it's just, it's an actual work day. And I think of other people that are at the gym at 5 a.m. so that they can shower and change and eat breakfast at 6 and be in the office at 7. It's like, oh my gosh, that sounds awful.
It is awful.
And you have even so much more time. You have all the way till 10 a.m. before you get to start working.
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, for us, I want to be clear. There was a progression. I did not go from, we opened this up with me being like, I want to work as little as possible. Got that. Decided that didn't make me happy. And then was trying to iterate and experiment. And I'm not going to get too deep into this, but let's sort of step through just a couple snapshots of like different sort of schedules that I experimented around with. And there were probably 20 times more than this, but I'll just take a couple snapshots to give you a sense of like what, and I invite you to do yours as well. Like, what have you been playing around with? I would say that there was one that I got obsessed with for a long time, which was the 4-day work week.
Right.
So I wanted to schedule 4 intense days and then have 3 days off. And the weird thing is that I ended up so tired after those 4 days that 5th day, let's call it like Thursday, right? Or Friday. Let's call it Friday. I really just spent the whole day like not useful to you, not having fun, just almost like recovering from that intense 4 days. And then would enjoy Saturday and then spend all of Sunday dreading going back into another 4 intense days. And this recurring theme for me was dreading, not the work. I loved my clients. I loved the work that I did, but dreading the intensity and the sort of packaging of the work.
And we had read a study that was done in one of the Scandinavian countries where people were given Fridays off, and it was shown to increase productivity. But what was interesting was when we tried this, sure, it might have been okay in terms of productivity, but we weren't enjoying it.
Yeah.
And that's what I think what you're putting your finger on, which is
I mean, mind you, if the choice was between a 5-day work week or 4-day work week, a 4-day work week would be a big improvement. But that's not the choice set that I had.
Right. You have much more flexibility.
Totally. What about you? Were there what was like a sort of snapshot of like an experiment that you were running with your weekly schedule?
Yeah, I think for a long time I was on the free Friday tip. And I think it was the thing I liked the most about it was that Friday felt even more free than the weekend days because everybody else was at work. So it was easier to get into the hair salon. It was like quiet if you went out to take a walk. There's nobody around in the malls and the stores. So like that was really cool about Fridays.
Yeah.
But I agree. It still felt like, the Monday through Thursday was too hectic, and sometimes work would still spill over into the weekend if I had like a really important project going on. You just can't help yourself.
Yeah.
It's like, you're just like, oh, well, I have all this time, like, let's just do it. So that was still not really like getting me to change. And then the other big shift I made was when I was pregnant and I just physically couldn't work as much as I used to.
Yeah.
And that was more about systemization and getting big projects and jobs off my plate entirely, which I've kept.
Yeah.
That's worked very well.
That was awesome. I mean, that's sort of a different podcast.
Right.
But
yeah.
There was also another thing that we were playing around with that I loved at the time and was a definite progression, But interestingly, we don't do anymore. And I can explain why. We used to do every month, we would do a 3-day weekend. So the idea would be that we would do 5-day work weeks, 2-day weekends. We never, I mean, let's be honest, even though we were working 5 days, I don't think we ever exceeded like 35 hours. So that was like my limit. In fact, many people will be like, find it funny to know that like, I've almost scientifically gotten it down to like somewhere between 30 and 35 hours, I become a grump.
Yeah, you do.
Like a total freaking grump. And I start hating my life. So for me, I never exceeded 35 hours. That was like a red line for me. But we started saying like, we started feeling like month after month, like we liked that schedule. We knew we were blessed, like that we didn't work as hard as others. But for me, 35 hours, mind you, I have a performative job. So like an hour spent coaching, 20 people on a call is not the same as an hour spent just like checking your email. It's much more intensive. So I started to realize, yeah, it might be working 32, 33 hours, but like every hour that I'm coaching like a group of people feels really like 2 or 3 hours. So the amount of energy that I was burning was just so high. So we came up with this idea of like doing a 3-day weekend once a month as almost like a way to catch our breath and like chill. And it was fantastic. Don't get me wrong. But what's been great about the 7-day work week is that we it's almost like every day feels so open and free that we haven't felt the need to do that 3-day weekend and just sort of melted away.
Well, I think what we replaced that with was longer, almost like 2-week vacations every couple months, which have been much more successful because we actually go somewhere and we have time to relax and unpack, and it makes all that planning worth it because you're almost doing the same amount of planning for a 3-day weekend as you would be for a longer vacation. And you're only there for 3 days and then you're back home. So that felt sort of wasted. And of course, I was the one doing all the planning, so it was actually just more work for me. So I like that we moved more to this like infrequent but longer vacation style.
And staycations. We're doing a lot more staycations.
That's the other thing I wanted to mention was we were actually kind of uncomfortable when we leave the house because we have such a good setup at our house, like in terms of our beds and the situation with our child and our cook and our nannies and our help. Like, it's so nice being home that it is sort of hard now to pry ourselves away from it.
It's totally true. It's like, it can feel, we went to a really nice place and we were just so uncomfortable because we didn't have our stuff. It lined up in our way. And so, yeah, now with the first baby, it has felt super luxurious to just take a staycation at home and just have like a 4-day work weekend where we just sort of like take a Thursday and a Friday off. And often what I'll do is I'll, schedule some chores on that weekend. So like, it'll just give me an open day to, catch up on some chores and stuff like that. So I want to talk a little bit about Mason Curry's book, Daily Rituals, because if we're talking about the pathway to getting to the 7-day work week, Mason Curry was like a really influential, person in this process.
Yeah.
So what I love about his book is it's scientists, artists, philosophers, basically just the most famous influential people in history, generals, and it talked about their daily rituals. And the first thing, read the book. It's so easy because every single person is only like 4 or 5 pages. So it's really easy to sort of pick up and put down. Great like bedtime reading or morning reading. But one of the things that you get right away is it's all over the place. It's almost like there's no rules. There were people who were incredibly successful who worked like 18-hour days and barely slept, and people who made just as much of an impact and they would wait around for days for like inspiration to hit them and then work for 2 hours and then stop, right? There were people who were, would take ice baths in the morning, were stone cold sober, and people who were like high on heroin and weed the whole time. It was literally all over the place. People who, used substances, didn't use substances, did it in the morning, worked in the morning, worked in the evening, worked highly regimented and regular, worked extremely sporadically, only when the inspiration hit. It was literally all over the place. And that, I think, leads me to my first, sort of share back here, which is that sort of like almost like there was this like message from my higher power that was like, oh, there's no template. You're going to have to make your own. And I think up until that point, I was sort of looking for that one schedule that not only I, but everybody could follow in all circumstances that would be the perfect weekly schedule. And although I do think that exists for me, I now I would never say that like anybody else would be as happy as I am doing the schedule that I'm doing. Like
I think it's also good for you at this particular moment in time.
Yes.
Like in your life, the life of our business. Like I think that we might change that at some point in the future.
Absolutely.
If something changes. I mean, I think like right now it's right. So I think that's another thing that books seem to have given you permission to just change it.
And just start with a blank slate and just say, okay, if I had a completely blank slate, what would I work with? So that was number one. I just want to toss it to you. Like, how has your thinking been like evolving around like, giving yourself permission to design a schedule that works for you?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I've done is in sort of putting Gigi first or whatever, taking care of her needs, I've realized how much I can get away with just scheduling in all the stuff I want to do first into my calendar and then almost forcing work to fit into the cracks. And I've actually experienced an increase in my overall productivity as a result of doing that. I'm getting like minimum 2 champagne moments done every week, despite working probably less than I ever have in terms of my actual work. It doesn't count like childcare work. So, I'll do things like we host a play date every single week at our house where tons of kids come over and we have like an awesome time. It takes up like my entire day, right?
Yep.
So I schedule that in. I'm scheduling in workouts basically 5 days a week because I can. I make them work and then I work my deep work around that.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to really just do deep work Monday and Tuesday. And again, because of the baby, it's like an automatic guardrail for me. Like I can't possibly work past usually around 3:30 or 4 because she'll need me for something or whatever.
As the day goes on, she gets fussier, more desirous of having you around.
Yeah, exactly.
And I can tell people, by the way, just like 100% vouching for this. When I walk in and I see that Carey's in like, we could have had breakfast and been sweet to each other and laughing. And when she walks in that room, it's like, don't bother me. Like,
you're talking about when I start working.
As soon as you start working, you're like, every single minute counts. I could see, like, you've always been a highly productive person, but you are like crazy eyes productive. Like when you get that like window of 2 hours. Exactly.
Yeah. Because I know that's my time. I can't let it slip or else it's not going to come back. So I try to take advantage of it while I can. And that's been really nice. What I've liked is that I've seen myself hit a lot more of my personal champagne moments, my personal big goals. Like, physical goals and just, intellectual goals in terms of reading and learning languages and that kind of thing that I haven't hit before. And yet I'm still fulfilling in the way I want to for Gigi.
Yeah.
And I'm also performing at work. So for me, it's right now I'm in a pretty good spot. I think I do still have a tendency to overload myself, which it's easier for me to do, I think, in my role in the company than it is for you.
Yes.
I don't do the coaching, right? So for me, it's like all marketing operations stuff. So it's easy to get out of hand.
Yes. And it's almost never ending, right?
It's never ending.
So one of the stories that I read, and I actually don't think it's in Mason Curry's book. I'm actually failing to remember this, but one of the stories I read and I got really obsessed with, the schedules of, famous people. And one that I came across was Stephen King. Yeah. And Stephen King, although he doesn't use the term deep work, it's really exactly what he's saying. He basically says, I have 4 good hours a day. And if I don't take those on Saturday and Sunday, those are lost. It's not like I can bank the Saturday, Sunday 4 hours of like truly good writing and then somehow add that into the week. It doesn't work like that. I have 4 hours a day, and if I don't use it, it's lost.
Right.
So his decision is every single day to put in 4 hours, but no more. Because what he found is that by trying to go over that, he would, he'd be taking it away from like the next day or whatever, right? Burning himself out. And when I combined that with what I know about deep work and shallow work, it really made a lot of sense to me. Like it felt like intuitively, like I had just naturally, when I really just like tuned into my own patterns, whenever I had a day when I had 4 hours of work for whatever reason, because I had an appointment after that, or because we were going somewhere, those were always like the smoothest days. It felt like there's a point at which if you thought about a curve with like a cliff, it's not just a so I would go back and say, instead of a curve, it's a cliff. So yeah, there's this point where you're enjoying your work, you're almost not working enough. And then you get to that beautiful top part of the curve where it's like you've gotten this like perfect, and then every single like minute or hour, like you're going to start to get more exhausted, more grumpy, or you're burning into energy that you would need to be a good husband or a father, or really go out to dinner or work out. I don't think about it as much as a curve as a cliff. Like I get to this, like somewhere between 4 and 5 hours, it just drops and I become a miserable SOB. And so I just started saying like, okay, well, if I'm trying to get X number of hours and I spread that over every single day, what would that look like? And so the way that I finally worked myself into it was one, thinking, oh, wow, I'm actually going to get ironically way more deep work, because if I only get 4 hours of deep work per day, but I'm working 6 or 7 hours, that means those extra 3 hours are actually hours where I'm working more slowly and I'm not doing as high quality work. So the theory was I could actually work few hours, but have a higher impact by capturing that deep work window every single day, including Saturday and Sunday. Another way, the flip side of that was I sort of talked myself into this idea of like, imagine that you're actually pulling the weekend into every day. So like every day, and I even blocked it out on my calendar as weekend time. So every day at 2:00 started this block of time that was called weekend time. And so this was time that I could tool around the house, and it felt exactly that way for me. It felt like instead of having to wait to the weekend or like holding on to the weekend, it felt like every day there was a bit of my day that was like sort of a weekend vibe,
right?
Where I could sit on the couch and listen to a record, and watch Gigi play with her nanny, just chill, just really have some chill time. So that is my best pitch that I can give to people around what I love about working 7 days a week, but only for 4 hours a day. Let me ask you, have you noticed, and it's okay if you haven't, but like, have you noticed any difference in me since I've gone to this schedule?
Definitely, 100%. You seem more energetic, like more happy. Instead of like you were saying, being like super tired at the end of the day, then I feel like, oh man, like he's not going to be able to help me with anything with Gigi or around the house or anything. I feel like you're actually engaged with her and you're able to have good conversations and stuff. And you also just feel more accessible. Yeah. Like to me, if I'm taking Gigi out to like the zoo or to the pool or for this play date that we host at our house, you're around, you come with us. Yep. Because you can.
I'm done with work.
Exactly. Before it was like, well, Demir's going to be working, so like he's not going to be able to go. And then I have to decide if I want to go alone.
Can I tag on that and just say, normally my 4 hours is the same 4 hours, but I do have the flexibility to move it up or back.
And that's what makes it so nice, because if it's only 4 hours, I'm like, oh, we got invited to this brunch. Like I'll bet you Demir could move his work block such that we could still make this brunch and he could work.
Exactly. I mean, it's been amazing for me. And who knows, maybe a year from now, I'll be singing the praises of something else. But right now it feels like probably the best pacing and tempo and just like livability of any schedule. And to say that feels so weird to me, to be like, as the guy who was like gunning for the 4 hour work week, right? 4 hours a week, to say that I'm working 7 days a week, 4 hours a day and loving it,
right,
is like, it's sort of weird to me. There's an irony there that I fully appreciate.
No, but it makes sense though, because we do have a service-based business. It's not going to be possible for us to go down to a 4 hour work week. That was possible in your other job that you had because you weren't client facing, but it's much more difficult when you are the product.
And that's the other thing, is having gone down, really compressed my hours down, I realized I love being in front of people.
Because we've tried that and we've tested it and, we've thought about it, and you were like, I don't want to do that. Like I like coaching.
Yeah, lo and behold, like I'm an extrovert. I like talking to people. I like coaching with people. I don't like coaching with people 8 hours a day. Like that's a bone breaker. But like, a good smooth 3 to 4 hour day with some coaching and some like a little bit of deep work, a little bit of shallow work. Oh man, that's like, I could do that every single day and love it.
Right.
So maybe let's wrap this up and let me hear about your conclusion. What does this make you think?
I think it's time for us all to unhook from that conventional wisdom about what the work week needs to be. I think people have more flexibility with that now, since a lot of people are working from home. If that's the case for you, you could talk to your manager, try to see if they'd be okay with sort of a revised work schedule, if you have something in mind that you think might work for you. Mm-hmm. I think we've had a lot of clients do that with their managers and have a lot of success. So I think you'd be surprised at what just asking for what you want can do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I mean, I couldn't back you up more. I think now we're living in a world with most people, at least knowledge workers, working remotely or working partially remotely. It really does open this window for you to just give yourself a blank slate. And the only last thing I would say is it really has to come from experimentation, right? Like, I know it's tempting, because I've done this before, to just say, I can theorize what my ideal schedule is. Like, I could just sit here and close my eyes and with my imagination, just decide on what. I don't have to go through the 7 or 10 steps to get there. I can just go straight from step 1 to step 10. And if I just may, you can't. You just can't. And all of the time you spend trying to guess is just a waste of time. What I would do is just iterate. Try little smaller experiments. Like, okay, well, like, let me spread it over more days or more hours. Let me move it into the morning or the evening. I'll split it into 2 blocks instead of 1. Like, start to experiment and just run these tiny experiments, because each experiment's gonna, I mean, at the very least, it'll tell you what doesn't work, right? So you'll learn something, right? You know, you'll learn, oh, I don't like working at night, right? Or I don't like working these many hours. And it's gonna get you one step closer, either through elimination or by hitting the ringer, for you to figure out like, oh, actually that felt really good. I'm gonna do a little bit more of that. Let me lean in to that. And I would just say one more pro tip. Sometimes we get stuck thinking about it inside of a week. Also think about expanding your analysis open to a month, right? So you could also redistribute your work inside of a month in different ways that could serve you. So think about playing with your month, not just, you know, with your work days inside of a week.
And don't let us tell you what to do. You know, no one is going to be able to tell you what your ideal work schedule is. So like Demir said, like, it's on you. You know, you got to start tweaking and experimenting.
Absolutely. That feels very complete. Should we wrap it up right there? Awesome.
Yes, thank you so much for listening. And guys, drop us a comment below with any of your thoughts on this subject, and give us a like and subscribe to our channel. Thanks.